know it's this. It's like a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowing like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion new single, my hater, the big better put on the road, I just spit. I know we got $1 million, the devil, that shit ain't not cheaper than
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. Here we present you different world stories and adaptations. This is the 8th part of What If Saitama Enters Dragon Ball God's Arena. Smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. You're in for it now. The aura and the intensity emanating around Frieza was astounding. It was as if he was an entirely different person. The spectators were at a loss. What did this new transformation mean? Was this the true power Frieza had kept hidden all this time? In the sky, Zarbon and the genius were just as bewildered as the Earthlings. "What's happened to Lord Frieza?" said Guldo. "I'm not sure," replied Zarbon. "Captain Ginyu, do you know anything of this?" The captain silently shook his head. "As far as I know, this form is entirely new. I've never seen Frieza beyond a state in his ultimate form." "So then what the hell happened to him?" said Rikum. "I have no idea," was all Captain Ginyu could respond with. What had become of Lord Frieza? What was coming? The only ones who had even the slightest grasp of the gravity of this situation were Saitama and Nappa. But for Nappa, this turn of events rocked his brain. This new energy Nappa was sensing was unlike anything he'd ever felt. The malevolence, the pressure, the fury, it had all skyrocketed to the point of causing him mild disorientation. It was simply too much for his brain to handle. "You better be ready, Saitama." The flowers were eerily still in God's dimension, and the sky was as cardinal as ever. The explosive growth Frieza experienced was insane, and this transformation Frieza had undergone was something God never thought would be possible. However, unlike the rest of the insects on the battlefield, God actually knew the cause of it. It's utterly astounding. Just when I thought Frieza was at his limit, when the severity of his injuries would finally catch up with him, when all hope would be lost, he managed to surpass his limit. Just like I'd hoped. But how could this have happened so quickly? More importantly, how could such a large increase of power occur? I expected it to be grandiose, but not this grandiose. Nearly all of the humans have been killed when subjected to this level of domination, and even for those who can survive, it takes months, no, years, for them to achieve this kind of limitless growth and power. It appears that Frieza managed to surpass the feeling of death enough times for his body to undergo a transformation. God shook his head. No, that wasn't all. This was more than just the physical pain he endured, and even more than his high willpower. For all of his life, Frieza has never known the possibility of failure, or the concept of humiliation. Being so utterly dominated by Saitama, this was an experience he'd never encountered before. To be forced into a corner like an animal surrounded by a hunter for the first time, it is a truly terrible experience. But it's when an organism is cornered like this, pushed this close to death and defeat, they become desperate. They are willing to do whatever it takes to win, removing any physical and psychological limitations they might have put on themselves and giving it everything they have. This, combined with Frieza's already massive energy level, his power up to 100%, his status as a mutant prodigy, and the ancient energy of this planet that amplifies any emotional, physical, or psychological changes of the inhabitants, all of these things served as the fuel for this groundbreaking transformation. Yes, that has to be the answer. The monster's cackle reverberated across the barren field. Saitama has no idea what he's in for. In the takoyaki restaurant thousands of miles away, Dr. Genos, Zombiman, and Armored Gorilla were speaking with one another. Zombiman knew better than to trust Dr. Genos' words. He knew the doctor's sick, twisted mind firsthand, and found it hard to believe he would just give up on his pursuit of evolution so easily. "It's been 10 years. I figured you would search for me and exact your revenge one day," said Dr. Genos, his voice showing no indication of panic. "You've become a hero. Quite the remarkable change." Having had enough of this casual conversation, Zombiman pushed himself off the ground and grabbed an axe hidden beneath his trench coat. The immortal hero held the axe above his head, getting ready to slice the doctor's head like an apple. Sweat beads began to fall down the doctor's face, but his eyes still did not display true terror. "You want to kill me? So be it. With my facility destroyed, my motivation has disappeared." Zombiman shot the doctor a dirty look, still mistrustful of Dr. Genos' words. "How was the House of Evolution erased?" questioned Zombiman. "As long as you remain alive, you can rebuild the house as many times as you please. So why did you stop then?" Dr. Genos didn't respond at first. "Answer me, Dr. Genos," shouted Zombiman. For a few moments, he remained silent. Then, he softly spoke. He suddenly appeared before me, a man who had attained a power that far surpassed my artificial evolution. All of my work, all of my discoveries, they paled in comparison to his might. That's the conclusion I have reached. He has removed his limiter. Zombiman's eyebrows scrunched up in confusion. Limiter? What are you talking about? Every living thing has a limit of how much they can grow. Too much power can create many issues. For instance, they could become a mindless, rampaging beast enthralled with bloodlust and incapable of understanding anything beyond his animalistic instincts. That's why God created a range of growth for each being so they maintain their mental sanity and ensure their survival. This growth restriction is called a limiter. However, this man has managed to train well beyond his limit and successfully removed his limiter. The facial features of Zombiman's began to soften as he took these words into consideration. So what you are telling me is that there was someone who obtained power that was strong enough to obliterate your entire ideology. Someone who could obtain that kind of power without any costs actually exists. Dr. Genos shook his head. No, he paid a hefty price for it. In exchange for his enormous power, he became bald, and he felt an immense sense of alienation from his previous self, and a creeping feeling of tedium and loss has changed him, leaving him bland and emotionless. Hold on. This description rang a bell to Zombiman. He was sure he had seen someone with a bald head and bland expression rather recently. But where? Did this man have a yellow tracksuit and white cape with red gloves and boots? Why, yes, he did. That's when it hit him. I know him. He's the B-class hero who was just promoted to S-class rank 4. He's been called a hero swindler by the public because he always eliminates threats right after S-class heroes have faced them. But if what you're saying is true, then... Zombiman dropped back to the ground as the pieces were being put together in his head. Then everything the public believes is a lie. I thought his promotion to S-class was merely a mistake, yet it appears I was wrong. Could there perhaps? Zombiman vigorously shook his head. No, that barely means anything. Yes, perhaps he is powerful. But I know of quite a few monstrous ones who completely disregard the limits of their abilities. No, he is on a completely different level than what you imagine. Humans become monsters due to a desire for power, a change in form, or merely bad habits. As a result, a cellular anomaly is produced in their bodies and morphs their form. Other monsters are created through genetic engineering, such as with my research. However, all of these things have nothing to do with removing their limiter. While it is true that an increased level of power is obtained, a new limiter is placed on their bodies. Heroes, on the other hand, are beings who already possessed innate abilities that could be drawn out through talent or training. But he is different. An ordinary person, with no special talents or skills given to him at birth, through sheer effort and willpower alone, pried through the doors of his limits and broke his limiter. So you're saying that through training, one could attain the same level of a faint sound filled Zombiman's ears, causing to pause mid-sentence. Dr. Genos noticed Zombiman's eyes harden, and tilted his head in confusion. What is the problem? I can hear several footsteps outside. Can't you? Dr. Genos concentrated to hear what Zombiman was talking about, and sure enough, he could hear the pitter-patter of many feet outside his restaurant. Perhaps it could be eager customers, said Armored Gorilla. No, our restaurant has never been this popular. And besides, why would people want to come eat at a time like this? Zombiman pulled out his signature Desert Eagle from his pocket. Well then, let's find out. The trio walked out of the room and stepped out into the street, and they gasped, standing a few meters from the entrance of the takoyaki shop. Dozens of humanoid-looking beings with matching outfits were gathering. The three looked up and saw that a few more were flying down from the sky to join their comrades. Each of the soldiers varied greatly in appearance, with only a few appearing like regular humans. From the thralling mass of unknown humanoids, a single individual with a long face and brown, spiky hair walked in front of the group, staring at the three of them with a serious face and his hands clenched into fists at his sides. He was the only one in the group who did not have a blaster on his wrist. Zombiman pointed his pistol at the individual and shouted, "Who are you? What is your purpose here?" "My name is Carmeth. We are soldiers of the Galactic Frieza Army. Our master, Lord Frieza, came to this mudball in search of a bald warrior of unparalleled might." Hold on. The bald warrior? Don't tell me. Coupled with the personal testimony Dr. Genos gave about a bald man with overwhelming strength, it was safe to assume that the warrior their master had come in search for and the bald man Dr. Genos described were one and the same. His thoughts lingered on what else the person described. He used both the words galactic and mudball, implying that they were from space, And if that was the case, all the pieces clicked together. These were soldiers of the god-level monster the other S-class heroes were currently fighting. But something still wasn't fitting into this whole picture. If your master has come in search of the warrior you spoke of, then why have you come here? The alien smirked. My partner Orlin and I were scouting the human population of this city when we came across you and your big friend over there with the white sweater. We saw you trailing him, and we decided to follow suit until you arrived at this shop. We started eavesdropping on your conversation, and learned that you were actually immortal. Not only that, but your creator is here as well. Can you imagine the reward we'll receive if we capture you both? We could give our master the key to immortality. Carmeth held his palm out towards Zombiman, and from it, a ball of red energy formed. So, are you going to come quietly, or are we gonna have to bring you in pieces? Zombiman cocked the pistol and met Carmeth's gaze with a stern intensity. If you can. Frieza still hadn't made a move. Shortly after speaking, he fell into a deathly silence and began staring at body, inspecting it to observe all of the changes that occurred after this transformation. Truth be told, he hadn't a clue what just happened. One moment, he felt a fiery surge of willpower flare up, and the next moment, he felt that fiery surge explode inside him. Even now, he felt that power coursing through his veins, giving him power he never thought could exist. Perhaps a demonstration is in order. Frieza decided to test this newfound power out with a simple punch. So, he craned his right arm back behind his back, formed his hand into a fist, and punched the air. The effect was astonishing. A gust of wind blew from his fist, causing Saitama to hold his elbows in front of his face and sending him back a few meters. The Space Emperor's eyes widened, and his mouth slightly opened up in amazement. What raw strength! Could this transformation have increased my power this much? Hey! Saitama shouted to Frieza, causing him to look up. Are you done checking yourself out? What? Are you jealous? Replied Frieza. Saitama scoffed. I gotta hand it to you, you do kind of look like a badass. Indeed, such a grandiose change is badass. But this planet's only got room for one badass. Frieza's mouth stretched out in a wide smile. I couldn't agree more. So why don't we end the confectionaries and let round 3 start? As a response, Saitama cracked his knuckles and his neck simultaneously. The final, climactic battle between the strongest hero on the planet and the Emperor of the Universe was about to commence. Everything that the heroes had been waiting for had finally come to full fruition. All of the hero spectators were shaking in their boots both in fear and anticipation for whatever was to come. Saitama bent his knees and sprung first. He slammed Frieza with a very hard right hook across Frieza's face. The force of the blow created large gusts of wind, managing to crack the ground below both of them and lifted rocks off the ground. Saitama's fist was indented in Frieza's cheek, yet this time, Frieza didn't wince or groan in any sort of pain. Frieza moved his face to stare at Saitama, all the while slyly grinning. Your love taps won't work anymore. The level of power Saitama put in his punch was the same as before, yet his punch now felt like an actual love tap. It was unbelievable. Frieza grabbed Saitama's wrist and ripped his hand off of his cheek. Frieza let out a boisterous bellow, taking command of his rage and his newfound power like the mighty weapon it was, and proceeded to kick Saitama in his stomach. Frieza's foot was surrounded by air friction and a light aura of black energy. Frieza's eyes widened in astonishment. Once again, Frieza was amazed at this amazing increase of power, not only in terms of strength, but speed as well. Just then, the speed of his kick had far surpassed anything he could have done, even at his previous maximum power. It was like he had a jumbo jet on his leg. Yet something else had occurred on the other side, something that seemed benign in comparison to many, yet was shocking to Saitama. For the first ever, the bald hero actually felt pain. His hand was clutching his stomach, and his knees were slightly bent down. The pain wasn't overwhelming, not at all, but it was still there nonetheless. He hadn't felt this strength from an attack before, even against Burrows. A dual flow of emotions were filling up Saitama. On one hand, there was the pain in his stomach, but that was utterly, overwhelmingly eclipsed by the glimmer of hope dawning in Saitama's sullied heart. For the first time in what seemed like an eternity, an enemy was able to deal a blow that didn't feel like a joke of a love tap. Damn Frieza. Saitama instantaneously recovered from the blow and smirked at Frieza. Your power-up wasn't just for show. I felt the kick. It is a pretty grandiose power-up, isn't it? And I still have ample room to grow. Low-pitched chuckles came out of Frieza's mouth. Oh ho ho, you'll pay for your impertinent attitude against me in the worst possible way. All of the damage will be repaid 10-fold. No, 100-fold. His smile disappeared, and all of the rage building up in him bubbled to the surface once more. Then, the Space Emperor disappeared from sight. He momentarily reappeared, then disappeared instantly. The speed and rate at which Frieza was popping in and out of sight made it appear as if he was teleporting. Well, that's what it looked like to all of the spectators, but to Saitama's eyes, Frieza was simply moving fast. Saitama quickly followed suit, and before they knew it, both fighters were out of sight. None of the spectators had even the slightest grasp of the battle taking place. The speed of both fighters was so amazing. Not even a blur of their bodies was visible. All they saw were invisible bursts of air from the points of contact, except the rate at which they could see. And here these blows was worlds beyond anything they had witnessed before. Saitama threw a string of punches at Frieza, but Frieza was able to dodge them with much more ease than before. With the next punch, Frieza took hold of Saitama's wrist and brought him in close. Frieza followed up with a series of very hard headbutts. With these headbutts, the repeated strikes actually began to sting Saitama's forehead. "Get off of me. All you had to do was ask." Frieza released his grip from Saitama, catching him off guard with this bizarre move. But Saitama should have known better after fighting against Frieza for so long. Frieza, being the dirty fighter he was, whipped Saitama with his spiked tail up his chin. He then twirled around and struck Saitama with a right spin kick. Saitama blocked it with his elbow, but the power in Frieza's kick was still powerful enough to send him sailing a few hundred feet across the sky, crashing into a rock formation. Frieza held his right hand out and fired a red ball of energy. When the ball was released, it began to grow as it soared through the air. The red energy ball exploded upon contact, sending all the rocks up in the air, and vaporizing a great portion of them in the process. For a second, the ground was motionless, but then Saitama jumped out unharmed, looking a bit peeved however. "God, you and your fancy little energy attacks," shouted Saitama. "You think you're so cool. Well, you're not the only one who can pull tricks up your non-existent sleeve." The bald hero bent his knees and curled his hands into fists. "Try this on for size." Saitama dug his fingers into the ground and took a great heave. The ground began to shake. Cracks began to form in the ground, spanning several hundred feet. Frieza's eyebrows raised up, his eyes cautiously observing the fissures forming on the ground below. Despite this, the lizard's composure would not be tested so easily, especially with this new power-up. The heroes nervously eyed each other, all of them unsure what Saitama was intending to do, and all of them shocked that Saitama could create such fissures by merely pulling on the ground. Shortly after, an absolutely monstrous chunk of the earth was ripped out of the ground. It was hard to determine the exact size, but it was around the size of the boulder Frieza had hurled at Saitama not too long ago. Perhaps a little bigger, maybe 30% larger. With a hefty tug, Saitama finished tearing it out of the ground and put the rock over his head. Saitama was inhaling and exhaling deeply, remaining calm despite the gargantuan rock he had above his head. Truth be told, he never tried to lift something this big, but he could handle it. "Yay, it's not so bad. Now we'll see how you like it." With a deep breath and a hefty shout, the bald hero threw the massive boulder right at Frieza. The spectators were at a loss for words, all of them too baffled at not only the size of the boulder, but that Saitama could throw something like that, and at such high speeds no less. Even with this fortifying display of physical prowess, Frieza's composure was not being tested. No, even as the massive island was hurtling straight toward him, he knew that this newfound power would protect him, give him the strength he needed to win this fight. In fact, Frieza decided to try something a little different out, to flash his strength right in everyone's faces. Frieza held his hand out in front of the gargantuan boulder, and as it was about to pummel him into oblivion, Frieza did something nobody was expecting. Frieza actually caught it with his bare hands. But wait, instead of stopping it midair, he actually went with the momentum of the boulder. He proceeded to change its direction, twirling it around him like an athlete would in a shot put competition. After spinning the boulder around him about 24 times, the speed had practically doubled from before. Even Frieza was impressed by this. "I like it this much." With a hefty throw and a boisterous shout, the Space Emperor chucked the boulder right back at Saitama. Genos and the rest of the fighters gasped, their eyes wide with terror for Saitama. "Master, get out of there," shouted Genos. The bald hero was, in fact, disappointed. Disappointed in Genos for doubting his master. Genos saw Saitama destroy a meteor. How was this any different? Saitama braced himself, hardened his face, and, with only a single punch, shattered the boulder into millions of tiny pieces. On the sidelines, the Saiyan general chuckled in amusement. He could see that Saitama was beginning to enjoy himself, just a little bit. Perhaps he was wrong in what he sensed in Frieza. Maybe Saitama really had this one in the bag. Suddenly, the millions of separate rocks in the air began to hover. Next, they were trimmed down until they were millions of daggers all pointed at Saitama. Frieza's hands were raised up in the air, the confident smirk plastered on the lizard's face. He flicked his fingers, and like that, the millions of stone daggers all went speeding straight at Saitama. "This again," muttered Saitama, "you really are an idiot." The bald hero calmly prepared himself and shattered all of the stone daggers that came his way. On the sidelines, the homosexual hero gave a quizzical look. "Are all of Frieza's daggers missing?" he asked. Garu shook his head. "No, Saitama is just punching all of them down at a hyper speed that our eyes can't perceive." Once Puri prisoner wrapped his head around the concept, he let out a small gasp of amazement. Wow. While all the other spectators were paying attention to Saitama, Tatsumaki's attention was directed to Frieza. While the others may not have realized this, Frieza's psychic powers had amplified significantly. She could sense the power of other aspers, and with what she was sensing now, his psychic powers could actually rival her own, perhaps even exceed it, as much as she hated to admit it. This isn't good. Tatsumaki silently muttered this to herself, so nobody else was able to catch this. If his psychic powers have increased by this much, thought Tatsumaki, there's no telling how much more powerful he's become in terms of strength and energy projection. God, Baldy, I hope you know what you're doing. Back on the battlefield, Saitama was able to pick up on the increased speed of his psychic abilities just like Tatsumaki had. But unlike Tatsumaki, this didn't worry him. On the contrary, it only served to excite him even more. Saitama was still playing around with Frieza. He hadn't even begun to test his new speed or strength yet, so if Frieza had more to show, he was all ears. About 10 seconds later, Frieza had run out of daggers to throw at Saitama, and the ground was now littered with tiny pebbles. In an unexpected move, Frieza began applauding his opponent, earning the confusion of everyone watching the fight. "Bravo, my friend. It seems you were able to handle my onslaught of daggers just as easily as before." "Yea, well, I think I managed to break a sweat," shouted Saitama. "Oh, you'll be breaking a little more than a sweat after I'm done with you. For you see, that was just a warm-up. In truth, I'm only just getting started." "Well, what do you know? Then I guess we should stop with the playtime and move on up to the big leagues." Indeed, we should. On the other side of the globe, the confrontation between the House of Evolution and the Frieza force was just beginning to dawn. Karmath and Zombiman continues to stare each other down, allowing for the tense atmosphere to further heighten. "Take this." Karmath sped up towards Zombiman. Instantaneously, Zombiman pulled the trigger on his Desert Eagle and fired 3 rounds before Karmath reached him. The Frieza soldier launched a left uppercut that Zombiman narrowly avoided, countering with a right jab to Karmath's chest. Alas, Karmath grabbed Zombiman's fist and twisted it very hard. "HHH," yelled Zombiman in pain. The undead hero reached inside his trench coat and grabbed his sharp curved katana. With a smooth slice, he swung his katana across Karmath's armor, carving through it and soliciting a yelp of pain. "Let's get him," shouted one of the Frieza soldiers. "HHH." The foot soldiers all marched onward in an adrenaline-filled swarm. Dr. Genos turned his head and stared at Armored Gorilla. The cybernetic primate realized the scientist's gaze upon him and looked down to meet his stare. "Attack," said Dr. Genos blatantly, "but remember to not get carried away." Armored Gorilla nodded. "As you wish, Doctor. Make sure to find a safe place to hide so these aliens don't get a hold of you." "Very well." Dr. Genos hurried back into his shop, leaving his 2 creations to fight alone. The primate grabbed his white sweatshirt and ripped it off his body, revealing his armored exoskeleton. From the suit, a helmet formed and covered his face, thus completing his suit of armor. For the House of Evolution, the gorilla sprinted to face the army of soldiers, facing them head-on like a gorilla would do in the wild. The first dozen foot soldiers that came into Armored Gorilla's proximity were launched several feet into the air with a single swipe of his arm. The next dozen came to a screeching halt, the adrenaline fueling them quickly being replaced by fear. "Fire your blasters," shouted Karmath, still in battle with Zombiman. The foot soldiers did as he said and prepped their blasters. But before they could fire them, Armored Gorilla smashed the ground and tossed dozens of large rocks at the soldiers, knocking the first wave off the ground. The mighty primate jumped into the air and prepared to smash the entire army away, but he was met with an onslaught of red energy blasts from the soldiers who were still standing. A smaller group of the soldiers was running to aid Karmath in the battle. Zombiman saw them charging toward him and fired his Desert Eagle at the soldiers. To his surprise, the soldiers were unaffected by the bullets, which merely crumpled up against their armor. It appears projectiles have no effect on them, muttered Zombiman. I suppose I'll have to rely on my melee weapons. I'm taking you down, screamed one of the soldiers. He jumped up to kick Zombiman, but the hero easily dodged his attack and, with a single slice, severed the soldier into two. A group of 5 soldiers all charged Zombiman at once, punching and kicking him simultaneously in an attempt to overwhelm him. The hero was unfazed, however, and easily dodged their attacks, countering them with his blade and landing several deep cuts on the soldiers. Meanwhile, the multitudinous number of blasts caused the gorilla to quickly stop his mid-air attack and made him fall to the ground. Armored Gorilla put his elbows up to defend himself from the energy blasts. He advanced step by step, his up defense allowing him to take the force of the attacks without considerable damage. Your attacks have minimal effect, said Armored Gorilla, you cannot win. The cybernetic gorilla pushed his arms out and nullified all of the energy blasts, leaving the soldiers dumbstruck. The demon-level monster pummeled at least 6 soldiers with a right hook. He then grabbed 2 soldiers by the face and began spinning around rapidly. Armored Gorilla was mowing down the horde of soldiers, sending them crashing into stone walls and glass windows. Once he felt he'd done enough, he banged the heads of the soldiers he had in his hands together and dropped them on the ground with a silent thud. Jesus Christ, whispered Orlin. This guy brings a whole new meaning to going apeshit. We're gonna have to bring in some help, or else Lord Frieza's gonna have to take a trip to Space Mexico. With that witty exchange of insults out of the way, the 2 warriors disappeared from sight yet again. For a few moments, the 2 of them were invisible, but this time they reappeared more quickly, exchanging a pair of fast-paced punches. The punches were so fast, all they could see was a giant blur of black and red in between them. After a brief moment of this, Frieza then kneed him in the stomach and sent him back flying several hundred feet. The Space Emperor jumped horizontally, flying through the air at crazy speeds. So fast, in fact, that Saitama barely had time to block Frieza's fist with his own. As a result, they were now locked in a battle of fists, both of them trying to gain dominance over the other, yet neither of them gaining a decisive advantage. The friction was enormous, lightning began to splint out from the fighters, and cobbles rose to the ground as they did before. Frieza's obsidian kai was glowing even brighter, expanding outwards. Immediately after, Saitama began to lose ground, his fist being pushed back by Frieza's. What the? Was Frieza actually overwhelming him? This was a first. Grah. Saitama yelled angrily and increased the force in his fist, managing to even the playing field again. The spark of fury shone in Saitama's eyes, catching the attention of Frieza. This was the first time he had ever seen Saitama show any signs of aggravation, which meant he was doing something right. It seems I managed to get a rise out of you. The invincible one-punch-man actually struggling, mocked Frieza. No, I'm just trying to give you a false sense of confidence so you don't start bawling once I kick your ass, replied Saitama. Oh ho. Saitama noticed the veins on Frieza's head throbbing, the energy surrounding him distorting and amplifying. You bald bastard. Red energy pumped up from his elbow, with a bright surge of this energy glowing on his hand, giving it even more strength. The sheer power now vesseled in the fist was too much for Saitama to handle, and in less than a second, the energy from his hand exploded. Saitama was blown back several hundred feet, tossed around like a rag doll, until he slowed down enough to a gentle slide across the rock ground. Master, Genos yelled out in concern. Never once had he ever seen his master knocked back by an opponent. Such a thing was unprecedented for him. Likewise, a wave of mild panic ran through the other fighters, and they shifted nervously in their places. Frieza let out a hearty laugh, all the while slowly pacing toward his opponent, who was pushing himself off the ground. My, an unexpected turn of events. What is the hero to do? Accept defeat and bow to his master, a move that has sadly long expired. Damn right it has. The faint sound of drops filled his ears. He looked down and realized that there were drops of blood on the ground. He touched his forehead and slightly gasped when he saw the red staining his fingers. This all seemed very familiar to him, being knocked back, blood being drawn for the first time, and his bulky, empowered opponent standing above him just after he knocked Saitama back. Yes, the memory came back to him. His serious expression disappeared, and the bald hero managed to let out a chuckle of amusement. Frieza's right eyebrow raised up. What's so funny? Did that last attack knock the sense out of you? No. Saitama looked up at Frieza and smirked. You see, I had a dream a few months back where an army of subterranean people invaded the surface, and I had to kill them all single-handedly. Ironically, not only was that the only time in 3 years I ever fought seriously, But this moment right now is almost exactly the same as that memory. And if the history of my memory serves as any guide, I'm gonna end the fight with this. Saitama pulled his right arm back and, with a loud yell, punched Frieza with a hard right jab, identical to how he first attacked in his dream. Though this time, instead of guts spilling out of his opponent's back, the mighty lizard took the full brunt of the blow, showing no signs of strain. Saitama's eyes widened, having trouble believing what he just witnessed. What the hell? You're still alive. An amused chuckle came out of Frieza's mouth. Quite impressive, isn't it? It is, replied Saitama. It means I can do this. Two-handed consecutive normal punches. Saitama launched a speedy quick volley of punches from both of his hands instead of his typical right hand. In response, Frieza blocked every single of the punches, with only 2 fingers for the matter. The force from Saitama's punches created gusts of wind that reached all of the spectators, as well as creating more cracks in the ground. Then, Saitama lifted his leg and struck Frieza with the heel of his right boot. Frieza caught his foot midair and spun it around, causing Saitama to twirl around at amazing speeds and making it appear as if he was a yellow spinning log. As a follow-up, Frieza slammed Saitama downward and grabbed his neck with his tail, lifting him up about half a foot off the ground. How about another neck massage? The only thing you're gonna have to pay me with this time is your life, but it's not like it's worth that much, so hey, you got yourself a steal. Saitama attempted to break free from Frieza's grip, but he couldn't. The pressure of Frieza's tail wrapped around his neck was crazy strong. Worlds stronger than his grip before. Kidney punch. Taking this moment to exact a small portion of revenge, Frieza punched Saitama in the kidney, causing him to grunt in agony, spitting out saliva in the process. Kidney punch, kidney punch, kidney punch, and pause. Frieza momentarily stopped his cruel jabs and immediately resumed them. Kidney punch. Alright, that's it. Saitama, having had enough of this abuse, stretched his arms behind his back in preparation for one of his more powerful moves. Killer move, serious series, serious clap. Saitama clapped his hands as hard as he could. The effect was instantaneous. An unrelenting surge of wind came forth from Saitama's hands, and the strength of the wind was strong enough for Frieza to release his grip on Saitama. Now you've done it. Saitama lunged for Frieza, the speed at which he traveled being fast enough to lift the debris up from the ground, and punched Frieza, being too angry to say the name of his attack beforehand. Saitama's fists were a big blur of red, and Saitama's expressionless face was now filled with annoyance and frustration. Saitama stopped his flurry of punches and swept Frieza's feet from under him. Frieza stuck his hand out to the ground and spun his body like a spinning top. With this rotating motion, he knocked Saitama off his feet and, while he was still falling, nailed him hard in his stomach. Saitama's eyes bulged out, and his hands immediately went to his gut. Emperor's Death Beam. From his fingertip, Frieza fired a red energy beam that hit Saitama's forehead. Then, a flurry of death beams were released from his fingertip and targeted Saitama. Saitama lunged up to Frieza before the death beams had the chance to reach him and landed a right hook on his left cheek. Frieza was momentarily stunned by the blow, but he countered by gripping both his hands together and slamming down on Saitama's head. Saitama lifted his elbows up to block the attack. The force of the attack sunk the two down several meters. Saitama clenched his teeth and swept Frieza from under him. The fiery hot willpower burned in Saitama's eyes, and with a loud shout, he punched Frieza in the center of his chest. While Frieza was still flying in the air, Saitama jumped up to continue his attack. The Space Emperor met his attack, however, and another quick exchange of punches occurred midair. It's coming. The blood in his cold, lifeless heart was starting to pump intensely, the wild throbbing in his heart. Yes, it was happening again. The feeling of euphoria was coursing through his veins. The rush was blessing him with life anew. The heat of the battle, the sensation of fighting such a worthy opponent, all of these were overflowing within him, setting his soul on fire. His dream was a dream no more. The reality of his dispiriting existential crisis was finally solved. This was just like his battle with the Subterraneans. No, this was even better. I've finally got it, screamed Saitama. I quote am finally back. With his bubbling joy, Saitama ended the exchange of punches by elbowing Frieza square in his nose, sending him crashing back into the ground. Saitama rotated his body and punched the air, creating a wind current that sent him blowing down to Frieza's position. He then rotated back and punched the ground just gently enough to slow his descent, and let him land with a gentle thud. How do you like that? Shouted Saitama, who was standing over Frieza with his arms crossed and his chin held high. The Space Emperor placed both his palms on the ground and pushed himself up and getting himself back on his feet. Hold on, something was wrong. Saitama couldn't quite pin it, but he felt Frieza was having a little too much fun. Even after getting serious and beginning to showcase his true power, Frieza was still acting calm, despite taking all those blows from Saitama. Hell, Frieza wasn't even frowning, his lips were forming a small smile. And then, to make matters even worse, he started slow clapping. "Hello," thought Saitama. "Congratulations. You graduated from pull-ups. Maybe I'll give you a juice box and a little sticker with a turtle saying, 'Slow and steady all the way,' as a little present." "Cute," replied Saitama, "but as enjoyable as it's been being tossed around like a used condom. I think the time has come to end this battle, I'm afraid." "Oh really? Well, let's say I disagree. But my dear friend, it is. Thanks to your oh-so-generous patience and stupidity, I can hardly feel your attacks. They're about as strong as your doppelgangers." "Is that so?" said Saitama. "Sounds like you're full of shit." "It's been fun." Frieza held out his hands and placed his right foot forward, performing the same pose as he did earlier. "You've given me a very bracing workout. Part of me might even shed a tear." Immediately, Frieza's dark energy began to seep out of him like smoke from a fire. Saitama unfolded his arms and took a defensive stance. Saitama's senses were sending him danger signals as Frieza stood there. It was as if Frieza were somehow making himself even stronger. It was enough to make his skin crawl. "Alright, maybe this won't be so easy." Suddenly, Frieza dropped his hands to his sides. He stared right into Saitama's eyes, then, as if mocking him, he widened them and let out a little hum of curiosity, as if saying, "Are you ready for this?" With lightning speed, Frieza appeared in front of Saitama and kicked him in the face. The bald hero yelled out in pain, and he was barely able to keep his footing as he staggered backwards from the blow. He shook his head and looked back up at Frieza. Then, Saitama felt a small trace of blood coming out of his nose. That speed was insane, thought Saitama. He shouldn't be that fast. Frieza beamed in delight when he saw the shock in Saitama's eyes. How good it felt to see that bald bastard in pain. Now he knew exactly how he felt before when Saitama toyed with him at 70% power. What daunting, unforgivable humiliation that was. Well, as he said before, Frieza intended to pay back Saitama in full. Slimy lizard. Saitama charged Frieza, but before he could reach him, he just disappeared. He looked to his left and could only stand still as he was hit in his stomach. The bald hero tried to counter, but Frieza had already vanished and attacked him from another spot. Ghhhhhh. Saitama started to move rapidly throughout the empty space, attempting to use his speed to evade the terrible lizard. But in less than a second, Frieza had already found him and struck his face with his tail. Before he could even open his eyes again, Frieza clamped his hands together and slammed him downward, and just before he made it to the ground, he kneed Saitama in the back. And finally, he hit Saitama with his tail again and put him in the ground. Two-handed consecutive normal punches. Saitama jumped up off the ground and attacked with his two-handed punching technique. But no, Frieza met Saitama's string of punches with his own, and in just seconds, Saitama was overwhelmed in the exchange of blows and became intimate with the ground. "You really need to come up with better names for your attacks." Saitama aggressively got back up again and snarled at Frieza. "Stick it up your ass," shouted Saitama. "You only caught me off guard, that's all." "Oh, is that so?" Frieza chuckled amusingly at the way in which Saitama responded. That sounded a little aggravated. "Now don't tell me that the most powerful hero on this mudball is getting worried." "Of course not," yelled Saitama. "The only thing that I'm worried about is how far up I'm gonna be able to stick my arm your ass." "Well, alright. Frieza put out his arms like a policeman would to a criminal to calm them down. "Since I seem to have hit a soft spot there, and I'm in a generous mood, I'm gonna give you one free shot. But I must warn you if you waste it. Killer move, serious series, serious punch." Before Frieza even finished his sentence, Saitama already went ahead and accepted Frieza's proposal. Saitama's serious punch made a direct hit on Frieza's right cheek. The shockwaves created from the attack were unbelievable. All of the spectators were knocked off of their feet. And in the sky, the clouds were parted, split in half. Saitama smirked. The power put into that punch should have been able to take care of 10 Friezas. This battle was already over. Heh heh heh. The smirk on Saitama's face shambled when he heard this low-toned chuckle. Saitama observed Frieza's face and realized there was a small trail of blood running down his mouth. But other than that, he seemed totally unharmed. Frieza wiped the blood off of his face, and with the lowest, darkest, most malevolent tone he'd ever used, said, "You're gonna regret it." Saitama was stunned speechless. This couldn't be right. Frieza just took his serious punch head on, and it didn't even faze him. At the very least it should have knocked him to the ground, left him disoriented for a few seconds. Before, his serious punch was able to make easy work of Frieza's most powerful attack, and back then he was mostly winging it. But he'd actually been serious when he punched Frieza, and this was all it did. It was completely insane. The spectating space pirates were awestruck at their master's immense durability, amazed at how much progress Frieza made with this single transformation. Lord Frieza's got him on the ropes now, said Guldo. Raccoon can't wait to watch the fireworks, exclaimed Raccoon. I never had a doubt, stated Captain Ginyu. Saitama's practically finished, added Zarbon. Without warning, static from one of the scouters blared. It took a moment for the space pirates to realize the noise was coming from Zarbon's scouter. Zarbon, are you receiving me? An unknown voice spoke into the scouter, but from what Zarbon could tell, he was panicked. His breathing was labored, and in the background, they could all hear the yelling of soldiers in the heat of most likely a battle. What's going on down there? Said Zarbon. Is the situation under control? We need assistance. One of the soldiers contacted the rest of us, telling us there was something important for Lord Frieza we needed to help him with. We found ourselves with 3 inhabitants. We thought we could take them, but they're proving to be too much for us. Zarbon, please come to our coordinates before we're all massacred. All right. Just send me the coordinates and I'll be on my way. Of course. Zarbon let out a perturbed groan. I swear, these foot soldiers are the worst. They can never handle anything by themselves. Zarbon rotated himself in the direction the coordinates were showing, and he began to increase his energy. I trust nothing will arise while I'm gone, said Zarbon. Not a problem, said Captain Ginyu. Just make sure you're back in time to see Lord Frieza land the finishing blow. Zarbon nodded. Will do. So with that, the handsome space pirate flew off into the sky, leaving the Jinyus behind to continue watching the battle of the century. On the battlefield, Saitama was yelling angrily and attacking Frieza with strings of very fast and powerful punches. Despite the increase in ferocity, Frieza was able to dodge and counter all of Saitama's moves with minimal effort. The lines of worry were etching deeper in the skin of the heroes watching this unfortunate turn of events. This is bad. The gap between their strength is widening, said Atomic Samurai. Frieza's just toying with him, exclaimed Garu. He's enraging Saitama, playing with his emotions. Not only that, said Bang, interrupting Garu, but Saitama's movements have become more erratic, more disorganized. What are you talking about? Demanded Genos. Are you questioning my master's abilities? Garu somberly nodded, with Bomb following suit. His technique was already that of a complete amateur. He just had his immense power to make up for it. But now that he's facing an opponent of equal, no greater power, this weakness is coming back to haunt him. He's not even defending himself properly. Look, the heroes looked to see what he was talking about, and while observing in detail, they realized Garu was onto something. Saitama was barely defending himself from Frieza, and his movements were very sluggish. He was forgetting to put his elbows up in defense, and his stance was completely wide and unfocused. His face was scrunched in fury, and his teeth were bared with frightening vice. Every time he was hit, his reaction time was delayed, and before he even had the chance to counter, Frieza was already gone and striking him in a different area. Damn it, Saitama. Just like the expert martial artists, Nappa could very clearly see what was going on. The Saiyan general felt like he was looking in a mirror. This was exactly what happened to him against Sonic. Saitama was too focused on anger, it was limiting his speed and reaction time, and it was only leaving himself even more open to attack. If he could, he'd try and shout to Saitama to calm him down, but Frieza would probably eradicate him, so the best he could do was watch and hope Saitama would come to his senses. Can't you see, Genos? Said Flashy Flash. They're right, Saitama's technique has become sloppy, even sloppier than it already was. He needs to hone his skills and reflexes, or he'll be completely helpless against opponents like this. The teenage cyborg prepared an angry retort, but he stopped himself at the last minute. Could they be right? Though Genos, is this the price of a lack of refinement? Could Saitama be this inexperienced in fighting? In the sky, a brilliant idea popped in Frieza's demented brain. Hey Saitama, shouted Frieza, cupping his hands around his mouth as he did. Get ready for my favorite game. PAINBALL. Round 2. Nappa's heart turned to stone. No. Round 2. Saitama didn't understand what Frieza meant and didn't have time to understand what it meant. From both of his fingers, Frieza fired a massive barrage of blood-red death beams. Unlike before, Frieza was constantly moving, changing his position as to make it more difficult to predict or avoid his attacks. This, combined with his surplus of speed, made it appear that there were multiple copies of Frieza firing from everywhere at once, even though it was just him. This was the new level of power Frieza had reached, and boy oh boy, did it feel awesome. The death beams ripped through his yellow jumpsuit and pierced his skin, drawing small pricks of blood. Saitama's blood began to boil. He was able to survive a trip to the moon without so much as a scratch, but these tiny little energy beams were able to make him bleed. Goddammit. Saitama bent his knees and dug his fingers into the air. Frieza knew what this was, it was all too familiar. Killer move, serious table flip. Saitama flipped the ground on the air to stop Frieza's relentless death beams, but before the terrain could go even 10 meters up into the air, their movement was instantly halted. The bald hero couldn't understand. He did exactly the same movements as before, but something was keeping them from soaring any higher. Yo, up here. Saitama looked up and gasped. Frieza's left hand was lifted up and there was a faint glow around his hand in the rocks. It didn't take a genius to put 2 and 2 together. The Esper watching on the sidelines was just as shocked. How was he able to react so quickly to stop all those rocks? It took me years to attain that level of reflex, and even now I'm not able to stop objects moving that fast in such a short amount of time. This shouldn't be possible. You really just can't respect my property, can you? Frieza dropped his hand, and all of the terrain fell back to the ground. Well then, let's see how you like it when your shit gets flipped. Frieza flew down to Saitama and pummeled him with a barrage of speedy punches. Like Saitama's punches, the force of the Space Emperor's punches created major gusts of winds and fractured the ground below them, as broken as it already was. Try as he might, Saitama was just too overwhelmed by Frieza's multitudinous punches. The combo of punches continued until Saitama crashed into a gorge about 2 miles long. The gorge instantly crumbled as Saitama's body cut its way through the large rock formation. Frieza hovered a few meters above the air, crossing his arms and coldly staring at the ruins below him. Snapping out of the damage he took, Saitama pushed all the rocks out of his way and looked up at Frieza. "This isn't good," muttered Saitama under his breath. He wasn't sure how much longer things could go on like this. You know, as entertaining a punching bag as you make, I find there is no more joy to be found here. So how about this? As a reward for helping me achieve an unprecedented level of strength, I'll finish you with this. In the palm of Frieza's hand, a bright orange ball of energy burst to life. As the seconds passed, the ball began to grow to the size of a small sun, although this one was twice as large as his first one. This is a little taste of the scorching heat you're going to be suffering for the rest of eternity. Now burn in hell. Frieza threw his hand down, and the fiery ball descended downward, preparing to vaporize Saitama into dust and forgotten memories. On the ground, Saitama's willpower was burning intensely in his eyes. There was no way in hell he would ever back down from this. "You think I'm afraid of this?" screamed Saitama. "I've handled it once, I can handle it again. Just watch." Even in the face of this horrendous scenario, even though he had been beaten to a bloody pulp, even though he'd been toyed with like a child's plaything, he still found joy in this situation. As disgusting as it might be, the rush of the battle was still present. It was still giving him fuel for his strength. It was like a drug addict getting his first hit after a year of abstinence. And like all drug addicts, the rush could kill him. But for a man like Saitama, he'd never let that happen. The death ball was rapidly honing in on its target. 50 meters, 40 meters, 30 meters, 20 meters, 10 meters. Bring it on. GRRAHHH. The instant Saitama's fist touched the death ball, there were powerful side effects. Huge lightning bolts shot out of the death ball, carving into the land, melting all the rock it touched and turning it into lava. Within a second of punching the death ball, Saitama's red glove was vaporized. Not that it was needed. The struggle was absolutely petrifying. All the veins on Saitama's head were bulging. His muscles were tighter than steel as he poured every ounce of power into holding back the death ball. His eyes were somehow both wild and focused, and more serious than they'd ever been before. But as admirable and impressive as Saitama's indomitable will was, Frieza's death ball began to overwhelm the bald hero. "Damn it!" screamed Saitama as he felt himself being pushed back. Never before had any opponent challenged him to this degree of intensity. Even with his anger and will fueling him, he was still losing the battle. HOHOHOHOH. That feeling of helplessness should be settling in quite nicely, yelled Frieza. "Let's see how long it takes before your bones are vaporized." "Damn you," screamed Saitama. "I'm not giving in." While he spoke these words with every drop of passion and fury in his heart, his seemingly invulnerable and unstoppable body was still being broken down. "You're putting up quite the resistance," said Frieza, "but it's over." Frieza thrust his hand outward, increasing the energy of his death ball. In less than a second, Saitama felt the death ball growing stronger, expanding in size. The death ball exploded in a bright flash, disintegrating everything in its path until there was nothing but a heaping pile of ash. Across the battlefield, Genos gasped in absolute horror while the other heroes looked on with worry. His master put everything he had into stopping that death ball, yet he failed all the same. It couldn't be true. No, master. Wait, said Bang. Look. The aged martial artist pointed down to the ruins of the battlefield, and beneath the charred ashes of the landscape, a figure popped out. The teenage cyborg let out an immense sigh of relief. Thank God his master was all right. Well, all right wouldn't be exactly accurate. Saitama's face was covered in dirt and blood. The entire upper part of his jumpsuit from his neck to his waist had been vaporized, leaving his chiseled chest exposed to the world. His right boot had been torn, revealing 3 of Saitama's toes, and Saitama's left glove was nearly gone, save for the pinky hole, and the lower part covering his wrists. His arms were drooping at his sides, and his breathing was very labored. That thing really did a number on me, said Saitama, wincing in pain in the process. I haven't felt this bad since the first year of training. That Frieza's really got some hot moves. Somehow, Saitama was able to crack a joke despite his serious bruises. You're still alive. Frieza's tail whipped in the air, and his arms were laying at his sides in a neutral manner. He was neither angry nor happy, just surprised. Your endurance truly is exceptional. Any other opponent would have been utterly obliterated, yet here you are, standing and ready to press on. Frieza's feet lightly touched the ground, and with only a few steps, he was standing in front of Saitama. Frieza's first action was slugging Saitama across the face, sending him into the ground. Before Saitama could get himself up, Frieza's foot aggressively pushed Saitama's head to the ground, his right cheek scraping up against the cold rock. Ah, you're in your rightful place, beneath me, groveling at my feet. Perhaps now you finally understand what I am. I am your master, your emperor, and your teacher to the most important lesson of all, never defy me. Frieza increased the force on his leg, causing Saitama to yell out in agony. Oh, what's wrong? Mocked Frieza, no clever comeback. No hateful insult. Come on, say something. Speak. Your master demands it. You are not my master, Frieza hummed out in surprise. Without warning, the bald hero squeezed Frieza's leg and threw him off of him. Saitama jumped up to his feet and punched Frieza with lightning-fast punches, pouring his heart out and giving everything he had in every punch. Frieza was caught off guard by the increased speed and strength, and was helplessly beaten like a punching bag. Grah. Saitama stopped his flurry of punches and struck Frieza with one very hard punch. The force of this single punch created multiple shockwaves and sent Frieza through at least 10 layers of rock. It's time I finished what I started, Frieza. Saitama bent down and, being careful not to go out of Earth's atmosphere, jumped several hundred meters into the sky. What is Saitama doing? Said King. I think he's going to finish it with one final attack, replied Garu. It's his last-ditch effort to end this battle. All the spectators turn their attention to the hero hunter. He's realized the dangerous strength Frieza possesses, and knows if he doesn't end it now, Frieza will reign victorious. So he's channeling all his energy into one single punch. Is that right? Said Super Alloy Darkshine. The muscular hero looked to the skies, and shouted up to the bald hero, you can do it, champ. Finish that wimpy lizard off with your godly muscles. Nettlebat followed Super Alloy Darkshine's lead and yelled out to Saitama, send that creep packing. End that wretched lizard's life, screamed Genos, cupping his hands to increase the range of his shout. It is your destiny. I know it is. Up in the sky, Saitama couldn't help but feel somewhat touched by his disciple's words. Even after he screwed the pooch and let Frieza finish his final transformation, he still cheered him on. He still had faith that he was the best and strongest hero in existence. It made him feel a little fuzzy. This one's for you, Genos. Saitama's speed decreased until he was stationary, leaving him floating in the air like a cloud in the bright blue sky. Gotta increase my speed, said Saitama, so what he did was turn the opposite direction, and clapped. The simple clap sent him flying downward at dozens of meters per second, and it only increased as gravity took its toll. Get ready for everything I've got, screamed Saitama. On the ground, Frieza had just gotten up and dusted himself off. He looked around, and realized Saitama had vanished. He was just about to ask himself where he went, when he heard Saitama's shouting. Frieza looked up and saw Saitama skyrocketing downward straight toward him. So he's finally coming at me with everything. Well, in that case, Frieza's dark aura erupted in a brilliant burst around him, his muscles swelling as the power coursed through him. I'll meet it head on. I hope you'll make it entertaining. Frieza flew up to meet Saitama. This was it. The ultimate battle between the two most powerful warriors on the planet, perhaps the universe, was about to reach its thrilling climax. Both warriors were on fire, their willpowers burning like suns. Only this would determine whose sun would glow brighter. When the two warriors finally met each other in the sky, both fighters screamed simultaneously. Killer move, killer series, ultimate planet-busting full-force punch, Supreme Emperor Nova Strike. The two moves clashed together in an electrifying, petrifying, absolutely glorious fashion. Upon contact, all the rock formations below them shattered, and the ledge upon which the heroes were standing fell apart, causing the heroes to be buried in rocks. Dozens of lightning bolts shot out, scorching the barren land, and the shockwaves were fanning out halfway across the globe. The dark aura around Frieza grew brighter, while Saitama's face only grew more angry and intense. The pair of fighters screamed as loud as they humanly could. And then, the sky lit up in a magnificent flash. The shockwaves created tremors so powerful, the very earth was shaking in fear. On the opposite side of the globe, humans were knocked off their feet, small buildings toppled, and wild animals whimpered, panicking at what they were sensing. It took about 10 seconds for the quaking to die down and the planet to stabilize. At the epicenter of the quaking, there was nothing but ruin. The once lush and vibrant landscape was all but decimated, replaced by rock, ash, and sorrow. The heroes were slow to get up, with the force of the explosion knocking their senses loose. "Is everyone all right?" said Puri prisoner through stifled groans. "I guess," said Metal Bat. "I'll be all right when I see that ugly lizard's lifeless corpse," said Sweet Mask. "Wait," said Genos, his eyes widening in fear. "Where is Master Saitama?" The spectators surveyed the land around them, yet were unable to see anything clearly due to the thick smoke from the explosion. "Pray that Saitama was all right." "I see something," shouted Geru, pointing to the target. Everyone looked, and saw a humanoid figure with no hair walking towards them. Could it be? The smoke gradually cleared, revealing a battered, limping, yet still moving Saitama. The cyborg's face lit up in happiness and relief. It was as if the weight and shame of losing to Frieza had been lifted off of him. His master did it. He had slain the god-level monster, just as he said he would. Likewise, the other heroes breathed sighs of relief, overjoyed to know that this fight was over. Nappa let out a hearty laugh, the first genuine laugh he'd done in years. Saitama had succeeded where he had failed. While he still would have wanted to deal the final blow himself, at least he knew Frieza was on his long, slow journey to hell. At last, his people were avenged, and King Vegeta could finally rest in peace. As he was walking, Saitama lifted his arms in triumph and stopped in his place to bask in the glory of his victory. The heroes applauded him, walking towards him with smiles on all their faces to congratulate him, just when they thought there'd be no more surprises, Saitama abruptly dropped his arms. His knees lost all their power, his mind blacking out as he fell to the ground, revealing Frieza standing right behind him, smiling in pure ecstasy. No. Genos couldn't accept what he was seeing. It just wasn't possible. It had to be some sort of illusion cast by Frieza. Ever since he'd become Saitama's disciple, he'd come to understand that there were no beings stronger than Saitama. His master was the ultimate symbol of strength and hope that made all monsters cower in terror, the representation of everything Genos aspired to be. There was no one stronger than Saitama. There couldn't be someone stronger than Saitama. If his master was truly defeated, then all was lost. "Saitama, you can't be defeated," said King, who was in a trance just as Genos and frankly the rest of the heroes were. This trance prevented them from hearing the uproarious Ginyu members cheering in delight as they watched Saitama's body fall to the ground and their master stand victorious. "The looks on your faces," said Frieza, bathing in the steaming bath of his victory. "It is truly a sight to behold. But what did you expect? I told you all you would experience a nightmare beyond the horrors of hell. Since your knight in shining armor has moved on to the next world." Frieza lifted his finger, causing all the heroes to jump back in fear. "I suppose you'll have to tell him what he missed." The teenage cyborg was not ready to give up, however. Using his quick thinking, he rushed Frieza to distract him with a new move Dr. Cusino has given him. Lightning Core. From his core, Genos produced a blinding flash of light to incapacitate Frieza. The Space Emperor yelled out in pain and grabbed at his eyes. Using the previous time he had, Genos scooped up Saitama and yelled to the others, "We have to run." Now, King grabbed Super Alloy Darkshine's shoulder. "Could you?" King didn't even finish his sentence before the black hero grabbed King and sling him around his shoulders. "I've got blast." Not having forgotten about the top-ranked hero in the Hero Association, Tatsumaki levitated Blast off of the ground and flew into the air with his unconscious body trailing a few feet behind her. The rest of the heroes sprinted as fast as they possibly could, which wasn't very fast. Garu, the hero hunter, honestly had no idea what to do, and acting before he thought, decided to run up alongside the heroes. The Saiyan general panicked. He stood no chance against Frieza with Saitama out of commission. But where could he go? I guess I'll head back to meet up with the speedy prick. Nappa powered up and soared into the sky. Stop, screamed Captain Ginyu. You're not going. Ginyu was interrupted by an incineration blast that captured him, as well as Raccoon and Guldo in its flames. Wretched, insignificant, Frieza muttered vehemently as he waited for the effects of the flash to wear off. It took about 15 seconds before his sight returned to normal. As soon as it did, he flew up into the sky to find out where the heroes went. Aha! Frieza spotted them running toward the populated city, although their pace was sluggish due to their previous injuries. Frieza cackled. Fools! Frieza held his finger out and prepared a death beam. No one shall escape my wrath, Lord Frieza. The sound of Captain Jinyu's voice cut off Frieza's attack. Frieza moaned in apoplectic annoyance and shouted back to Jinyu, "What is it?" "I'm in the middle of something." Captain Jinyu nervously tensed for a moment, but quickly mustered up the courage to tell Frieza the important discovery. "I've just received an urgent message from Zarbon. He says one of the foot soldiers may have found someone who could grant you immortality." Frieza's eyes became as wide as saucers, and the other fighters were instantly forgotten. Frieza flew down and grasped Jinyu by his shoulders. "Tell me where they are." Captain Jinyu looked off at the escaping heroes and then back at Frieza. "But sir, don't you want to finish off the hero?" Frieza angrily shook his head. "They've already lost. And besides, I've far surpassed any measly power they currently possess. They no longer pose any sort of threat. Besides, you and your men can track them with your scouters." Frieza's grasp on the captain's shoulders tightened, and he frantically shouted, "Now give me the coordinates." "Of course. Here." Captain Jinyu scrambled to remove his scouter and quickly gave it to Frieza. "I've locked in the coordinates onto the scouter. They're a few thousand miles away from our current location, so the trip should take about half an hour, maybe more." Frieza's Kai sparked to life around him, and he skyrocketed off to the location of the coordinates before Captain Jinyu could finish. Frieza's excitement burst forth, and his glee was more present than ever before. It was as if fate had extended its hand out and given him these amazing gifts one after another. "I can't believe it." Frieza was more hopped up than a kid on Easter candy. "Imagine my luck. First I get this amazing power and completely break Saitama, and out of the blues, my wildest dreams could possibly come to fruition. Whatever god is on my side, I am grateful for your support. At last, the mighty Frieza shall be blessed with immortality." Dozens of foot soldiers were broken, moaning and groaning in agony. The damage they'd taken had been severe, and some of them had even been killed. Only a few managed to remain unscathed, and they were all anxiously awaiting the arrival of their master, who was due to arrive shortly. Zarbon was among the unharmed soldiers, and he was standing victorious over his opponent, Zombiman. His enemy-turned-ally, Armored Gorilla, has a massive hole in his chest and was lying defeated on the wall, right beside the good Dr. Genos, who was unharmed. "Look, up there." One of the foot soldiers pointed to the sky, taking note of a dark figure coming into view. The figure came at amazing speeds, and in less than a few seconds, he went from a dot in the sky to standing right in front of them. But this didn't look like Lord Frieza. The soldiers looked at each other, uncertain of who this stranger was. "You fools," shouted Zarbon, "this is Lord Frieza." The soldiers all felt their hearts jump up to their mouths. In less than a second, they straightened themselves and bowed down to their master. "Our deepest apologies. We just didn't recognize you with your bulkier appearance." "Understandable." Frieza walked past his soldiers and towards Zarbon, who was also bowing to his master. "I was wondering where you were," said Frieza. "I apologize for leaving so abruptly, but there was an urgent call, and I didn't want to interrupt your battle," replied Zarbon, being sure to be as polite and humble as possible. "So what exactly happened here?" "Well," Zarbon soared through the air to answer the distress call. As he passed the populated cities, he noticed there were monsters destroying the cities and attacking citizens. There were some heroes fighting the monsters, but most of them were one-sided. "It appears these earthlings really have their hands full." Zarbon's scouter beeped, telling him his destination was in 3 miles. "Now where are they?" Zarbon surveyed the land below him when he spotted a large fight breaking out. He squinted and realized many of the fighters had Frieza force armor. "That has to be it." Zarbon's Kai glared to life, and within seconds, he landed at the site of conflict. "Oh my." This was all Zarbon could say as he watched what was happening. More than half of the soldiers were trying to fend off a giant armored machine and failing miserably, and a smaller group was in combat with a man. The man had black hair, pale skin, and a katana in his hand. Zarbin, one of the soldiers, came sprinting to his side. He was clutching his left arm, and his right eye was badly bruised. "Thank God you're here. What's going on? We're being hammered. That robot ape has barely let up, and half of our forces have been knocked out. He has to have a power level of at least 15,000. And the other one has regenerative abilities that allow him to recover from any attacks we lay on him." "I see." Zarbin pushed the soldier aside and began walking into the battle. "I can handle this, no problem. But just to be on the safe side." Zarbin bulked up and transformed into his powered-up state. If you learned anything from watching these last several battles, it's that the inhabitants of Earth were full of surprises. Zarbin dashed up to Armored Gorilla, taking him by surprise and landing a point-blank energy attack. The Might Cyborg staggered, but quickly recovered and looked up at the one who had attacked him. He then lifted his right arm and swung his right arm. But shockingly, Zarbin catched it with almost no effort, eliciting a gasp from the gorilla. Heh. Zarbin went on the offensive and landed several punches, their speed being much faster than what Armored Gorilla could track. Zarbin then performed a front kick that struck Armored Gorilla's chin, causing him to fly up into the air. But just before he landed on the ground, Zarbin went beneath him and caught him. How weak. Zarbin tossed Armored Gorilla and slammed him into the wall. Then, for the final touch, he extended his palm and fired his elegant blaster. The orange energy beam pierced right through the gorilla's armor and went out the other side, destroying the building behind him in the process. Zarbin grinned. One down, one to go. Zombiman's katana was drenched in blood as he sliced and hacked through the Frieza Force soldiers. He was confident the battle would be over in about 30 seconds, but he hadn't counted on a huge, monstrous beat coming in and punching him in the stomach. The undead hero yelled, some saliva pouring out of his mouth as he did. "What? Who the hell are you?" said Zombiman. "Where did you come from?" "I'm one of the elite henchmen of Lord Frieza," replied Zarbin. "I received word the foot soldiers were having a tough time against you and your friend, so I decided to care of it myself." Zarbin grabbed Zombiman's face and fired an energy beam, scorching his face. The hero staggered back and revealed his charred black face. Yet it began to change. In seconds, the dead skin was regenerating, replacing the dead skin cells with new skin cells. My, it appears your regenerative abilities weren't a lie after all," said Zarbin. "But it will take more than regeneration if you have any hope of defeating me." Zombiman's eyes hardened, and he sliced Zarbin with his katana. But the monster caught it with only 2 fingers. "What?" Zombiman swirled his sword and attempted to strike Zarbin multiple times, but every single time, Zarbin intercepted the sword like it was just a plastic stick. "How weak." Zarbin snapped the katana in half and threw the piece he had in his hand at Zombiman's head. His head was split down the middle, and the piece Zarbin threw was lodged deep into the ground. "Your physical abilities are adequate at best, but you're not dealing with an adequate fighter." Zarbin fired a volley of energy blasts, which left deep wounds in Zombiman's skin and left smoke rising in the places they landed. Zarbin flew forward and ruthlessly bested Zombiman with nothing but pure killing intent. Zombiman's regeneration was unfortunately too slow to heal all the damage Zarbin was dealing, so he could do nothing while Zarbin pulverized him. Zarbin barreled his fist through Zombiman's chest. The undead hero gasped when he felt Zarbin's hand go straight through him. Zarbin took his hand out and fired his elegant blaster straight through the wound hole. Zombiman fell to the ground broken, bruised and defenseless. Zarbin slowly walked until he was directly above him and stomped hard on his chest wound, causing the hero to yell in pain. "Let's see how long it takes you to regenerate from this." Zarbin took hold of Zombiman's right arm and with a mighty pull, he tore Zombiman's arm clean off. The hero screamed, while the villain laughed. Suddenly, the door of a building flew open, and 2 Frieza soldiers were holding a man with long black hair and a white sweatshirt hostage. "Who is this?" said Zarbin, who had reverted back to his regular state. "This is the man who is going to make Lord Frieza immortal." So after that, I contacted Captain Ginyu to tell you about the news while we kept watch over these 3. So far they haven't said a word. "I see. And who exactly made this discovery?" "We did." 2 Frieza soldiers who were watching over Dr. Genos and Armored Gorilla spoke up. "And who exactly are you?" The soldier with the purple skin spoke first. "My name is Carmeth, and this is my partner Orlin. We were trailing that man." Carmeth pointed to Zombiman, "because he was acting very oddly. It was then we found out he was a test subject made by a mad scientist in an attempt to create an immortal being. He is the scientist." Carmeth pointed to the man with black hair and the glasses. "Interesting." Frieza walked up to this man and bent his knees down. "I'm sorry for all the trouble my men have caused you," said Frieza, flashing a smile and acting very polite. I must inquire, who are you exactly? Don't tell him anything, screamed Zombiman. Frieza scowled and turned to Zombiman, firing a death beam that blasted his mouth and most of his nose clean off his face. As I was saying, Frieza turned back to Dr. Genos. Who are you? What is your name? The good doctor nervously gulped. My name is Dr. Genos, he said. I am the creator of the House of Evolution, a disbanded organization dedicated to humanity's evolution. Subject 66 was my first success of the Immortality Project. How advanced are his regenerative abilities? I've seen them firsthand, interjected Zarban. They are advanced, but they aren't instantaneous. For instance, I tore his arm off, and it took 15 minutes for it to grow back. Frieza took this information in with burgeoning interest. While Frieza did indeed have a certain extent of regenerative abilities and extended longevity, his regeneration was very limited, and would only be effective when he transformed. A little on the slow side, but still not terrible. Now, Dr. Genos. Frieza's face turned back to Dr. Genos, and he gave him another very warm-hearted smile. Yes, would it perhaps be possible to make me immortal? What, theoretically speaking, could it be done? I'm not sure. I was able to restore my youth by altering my genetic code. But I don't think I can manipulate your DNA to make you immortal. I don't believe it can be done. Can't you at least try? This didn't sit right with Dr. Genos. He heard of what Subject 66 had said about the threat to humanity, and given the evidence before him, he was pretty sure this Frieza character was the impending threat to humanity. Not only that, he could see Frieza's desperation for immortality. He attempted to hide it through his charming charisma and kind words, but Dr. Genos could see right through it. The voracious lust this lizard had for the prospect of eternal life. He was quite sure this character would stomp on the lives of millions of lives and eradicates countless civilizations to get what he wanted. And after everything he'd learned in his personal evolution, he refused to stoop to assisting this monster. No. Upon hearing Dr. Genos' fierce rejection, Frieza's smile instantly faltered, and his hands tightened into fists. Is that so? The tone in which he spoke was soft and measured, but it wouldn't be for long. Frieza grabbed Dr. Genos by the neck with his and began choking him. The doctor frantically tried to break free, but it was pointless. Frieza stared into the eyes of the mad scientist to see the fear building up. You're on the clock. This is the softest grip I can use, and already your face is turning red. I'd say you only have a few seconds before your neck snaps. The lizard's patience finally crossed its limit, and he furiously shouted, now comply or die. The good doctor ferociously stared at Frieza, suddenly filled with the determination not to concede. So with the last of his strength, he showed Frieza his middle finger and mouthed the words, I choose to die. Frieza snapped. Wretched, insignificant. Stop. A voice rang inside of Frieza's head, stopping him before he could make any reckless actions. No need to break this man's neck, said the voice. I believe I may be of assistance. Who is this? Frieza thought these words, assuming they would reach out to whatever was contacting him. In an instant, the Space Emperor's entire body jerked up, and his eyes bulged. Frieza felt his spirit being transported out of his body, like he was flying out into the cosmos. For a moment, everything was black. Then, the setting began to change. In a few seconds, a landscape began to form all around him. In all directions stretched a field of yellow daisies as far as the eye could see, with beautiful golden petals decorated on each and every one of them. Up above him was a blood-red sky that gave the setting a tone of eeriness, as if some sort of terrible apocalypse was just seconds away from destroying this entire valley. As he continued to observe the landscape around him, he stopped dead in his tracks. Standing in front of him was a massive creature. Its entire body was covered with a layer of bones and flesh, making it appear as if it was pulled inside out. Even his very face was just a blank slate, devoid of any life. Greetings, Frieza. The creature's voice was like a piercing blade, something that would unnerve beings of weak minds. But for Frieza, it was but a casual tone. Who might you be? Inquired Frieza, and why have you brought me here? I am a watcher, surveying your dimension and observing all of the events taking place. I've been watching you ever since you arrived on Earth, and I must say, you have exceeded my expectations. Through sheer willpower and your innate strength, you've managed to attain tremendous power far surpassing anything any mortal has attained thus far. I'm aware, replied Frieza. I have been waiting until the opportune moment to speak to you in person. So once you defeated Saitama and made your way to Dr. Genos, I thought the time was right to offer up my services. Why would you possibly want to help me? The bony creature put his hands behind his back and craned his head down to Frieza. I was a former inhabitant of planet Earth, banished by the human race to this parallel dimension to spend eternity in isolation. Since that day, I have attempted to exterminate the human race and save this planet from their terrible actions by using the primordial magic in this dimension, but have found little success. Why not spare for a few acceptably strong insects here and there? It can't be that much of a hassle. As you've already witnessed, that infuriating man Saitama possesses unbelievable power that I am unable to surpass. I thought my hopes of destroying him had all but vanished, but then you came along. Your newly acquired strength has already made easy work of him, and now that he is out of the way, there is nothing left standing in the way of this planet's salvation. I see. Frieza found little relevance nor care in this creature's sob story, and decided to change the subject to something that would actually benefit him. You mentioned before that you could assist me. Yes, I have the ability of mind incursion, and can bend the minds of men to my will. So you're saying you could control that scientist to work for me? Indeed I could. Frieza broke into a fit of joy. Outstanding. However, the sudden change of tone in the creature's voice caused Frieza's joy to quickly diminish, and the Space Emperor put on a more serious face. I expect something in return, and that is, in exchange for my cooperation, you shall not consume any resources of this planet, and you shall not destroy any more of this planet's bountiful lands. The planet has already lost enough. The Space Emperor was displeased at this creature's demanding tone. Someone like himself so high up in the universe's pecking order would not be talked down to or forced into compliance. Have you any inkling in that head of yours who you're speaking to? The Emperor of the universe will not be bargained with. I will do as I please, and if you have a problem with that. Frieza lifted his hand up and prepared an orange energy ball to fire at the creature. However, the creature did not seem alarmed at Frieza's threats. Your attacks cannot harm me in this dimension. In here, I am invulnerable. Frieza snarled and fired the energy ball, but the attack went right through the creature's body. You should be warned, I am not one to be trifled with. You have already seen the power of one of my subordinates, Homeless Emperor. Frieza recalled the warrior who went by that name, and from what he remembered, his power level was above his own elite force and most of the members of the Ginyu force. The creature went on, and that was just a fraction of what I'm truly capable of. If I so wished, I could warp your mind, toy with it until your sanity is hanging on a thread. The creature had no intention of telling Frieza that after his massive power-up, he had become immune to any of his spells or mind incursions. No, this little secret helped him maintain the edge in this arrangement. Frieza's face softened slightly as he pondered his words. If this creature was as powerful as he claimed, and he indeed had the power to unhinge his mind, then it would be foolish to test him. Besides, what he was demanding wasn't such a hindrance to any of his plans. The plentiful warriors on this planet gave him enough benefits, and he had ample resources from other planets, so it wasn't like he was desperate for supplies. Frieza sighed in exasperation, pinching the bridge of his nose as he sighed, and said, "Very well, I'll adhere to your conditions, but if you fail to make good on your promise, I will do as I please with this mudball planet." "Very well. You may do what you please with the human cities. If anything, I encourage you to level them off the place of the planet. Now then." The bony creature unfolded his arms from behind him and snapped his fingers. "Dr. Genos is now under your control. Now return and finish wiping the scum off of this planet." As soon as he finished his sentence, Frieza felt his conscience being ripped out of the creature's world and warped back into his reality. His eyes adjusted back to his reality. All around him, his soldiers were surrounding him, looking in concern. Frieza didn't understand why this was, but then he realized he was lying on the ground. "My lord." Zarbon hovered over his master in dear concern. "Are you all right? Calm yourself, Zarbon." Frieza placed his palms on the ground and briskly pushed himself up off of the ground. His soldiers immediately backed away to give their master space. "I'm fine. How long was I on the ground?" "About half a minute," replied one of the Frieza soldiers. "What happened?" "I had a close encounter." The Frieza Force soldiers didn't understand what their master meant, but they figured further prying wouldn't do them any good, so they kept their mouths shut. "Lord Frieza," Carmath alerted his master. "Something's happening to the scientist." Everyone looked to see what Carmath meant, and they saw the scientist's body rapidly jerking, his arms and legs flailing about and his head shaking like a leaf in the wind. "Interesting." Frieza walked over to Dr. Genos, and when he approached his body, the scientist's jerkish movements finally began to slow down, until he was lying down with his stomach flat on the ground. The Space Emperor's lips formed a small smile. "Now then." Frieza lifted Dr. Genos' chin off of the ground so they were staring eye to eye. The doctor's eyes fluttered open, but when he opened them, there was a faint red outline around his pupils. With a soft, gentle voice, Frieza said, "Now, allow me to ask you again. Will you assist me in my quest for immortality?" Instead of thoroughly rejecting him as he did just a few minutes ago, the doctor's face lit up like a fluorescent bulb and with a fervent passion, replied, "Nothing would give me greater honor, my lord." The Space Emperor chuckled in amused delight. "Excellent." Zombiman, who was still regenerating his mouth and nose, felt a cold fist wrap around his heart. What just happened? A minute ago, Dr. Genos had outright refused, but now he was willing to die for this slimy reptile. What happened in the span of a minute to completely change Dr. Genos like this? Did Frieza have some sort of telepathic ability he kept concealed? It didn't make any sense. Dr. Genos continued. "I'll need to get some raw materials to begin the research," he said, "as well as some machinery from my old laboratory. Whatever you need, my men will get for you." GGGRRLHHH. The undead hero's vocal cords and most of his mouth had finally regenerated, allowing him to let out an unintelligible garble. "What were you saying?" mocked Frieza. The Space Emperor trotted over to Zombiman's side and bent down right next to his face. "I'm sorry, I don't speak imbecile. YYYLLHHHHFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFF I'll have to deal with them first." Zombiman pointed behind Frieza. The lizard didn't even have time to turn his head before he felt a metallic fist slam him in the face. The corners of the undead hero's lips curved upward ever so slightly. "Thank God these fools didn't search me," thought Zombiman. "Or else they would have found the emergency transmitter hidden inside my trench coat calling the remaining S-class heroes to my location. Hopefully they can at least land some scratches on him." Zarban's face twisted in shock. "Lord Frieza." Zarban fired an elegant blaster through Zombiman's chest before flying to his master's side. However, this concern was unneeded, as Frieza shook off the attack like it was nothing, because to him, it wasn't. Now Huinna, standing in the center of the street, was another machine. The machine had long black hair and wore a white mask. His mask had a single horizontal slit for the eyes, and a single red shining eye in the center of the slit. The mask also had 3 small vertical slits where his mouth should have been. His armor had a rather simplistic design, being similar to a medieval Black Knight's armor, and apparently he had some friends. Standing on his sides were 2 other very odd-looking individuals. The one on the right was a large, obese man, and when he meant obese, he meant the size of a freaking elephant, with several layers of fat to prove his testament. He had short brown hair, big lips, and wore a long-sleeved green shirt. But the one on the left was even more bizarre than the fat one. This one was a young-looking man with a blank and uninterested look on his face, and for God knows what reason, was dressed in a full-body dog suit with a red collar, with his face showing where the dog's mouth should be. "All right, you two," said the man dressed like a dog, "let's try and make this quick. I'm not comfortable leaving my town unprotected." "Well, unfortunately," replied the machine, "our entire planet is unprotected, so your city should be the least of your concerns at the moment." The dog man sighed and grudgingly conceded to the machine's words. "Did you 3 just come from Comic-Con or something?" said Frieza, "because what kind of normal people actually dress like that?" "Good God." The machine spoke for the other 2. "So you're the god-level threat we've been preparing for." As expected of a machine, his voice was cold and mechanical, devoid of any emotion or life. "I've been getting that quite a lot since I got here." "Yes, that would be me, Lord Frieza, and this is my elite henchman Zarban." Frieza motioned to Zarban. All day, he'd had to deal with new people popping in and out, and quite frankly, it was becoming very vexing for him. After these 3, he was done meeting new people for the rest of the day. Frieza pinched the bridge of his nose for a few seconds, then asked the signature question. "So who are you 3 exactly?" "We're professional heroes. S-class." The 3 heroes quizzically looked at the lizard. Yes," said the machine. "How did you?" "I've fought and decimated your friends just a few hours ago, so I'm familiar with this run-around. Now names. Come on, let's do some quality sharing." The fatty was the one to speak next. "What did you do to?" "I said names." The machine spoke. "I'm Drive Knight. This is Pig God, and this is Watchdog Man." "Wow, those names are actually quite fitting for heroes as bizarre as you 3. Pig God interrupted Frieza and shouted out with concern. "What did you do to the other S-class heroes?" Well. Frieza waved his hands out to relax the fat hero. "Just cool it. You don't need your blood pressure going up. You have enough problems already. Your little friends are fine. for now, but if I were you, I'd be more worried about how you're going to get out of this situation alive. Zarbon, go back with the other soldiers. I can handle these 3 by myself. Oh, and Frieza removed the scouter from his eye and handed it to Zarbon. Hold on to that for now if you would. Zarbon respectfully bowed to his master. As you wish. The elite soldier flew to meet up with the rest of the soldiers, leaving the 4 warriors to themselves. Pig God's fury began to bubble up if what Frieza said was true and all the other S-class heroes were actually defeated. Then that meant they were Earth's final defense. The fate of the world was resting solely on their shoulders, and boy did it feel heavy. Pig God took a deep breath. Well, here we go. Drive Knight formed a box-shaped object from his body so that it was at his right-hand side. Tactical transformation, Centaur Silver combo. The box released small jolts of electricity as it changed its form to suit Drive Knight's needs. The box began to envelop around Drive Knight, its energy and components surrounding his legs. It was as if the box was fusing with Drive Knight, changing his form by transforming his lower body into that of a mechanical horse's. His right arm was replaced with an electricity-imbued sword. His right shoulder now had 2 spiky protrusions and a cable connecting to his sword, presumably to give it the constant flow of electricity. Watchdog Man was the first of the 3 to attack, sprinting toward Frieza on all 4s like the canine he acted like, and struck him with his paw. Frieza effortlessly caught his paw with his hand, breaking the stoic hero's deadpan expression for the first time in a while. Drive Knight followed Watchdog Man's lead and galloped toward Frieza, his electric sword primed for the blood of the slimy lizard. Drive Knight swung his sword and attempted to slice Frieza in several pieces, but Frieza masterfully evaded all of his strikes with almost non-existent effort. This is just sad. Frieza released but a small burst of energy, and the 2 S-class warriors were sent hurtling back into buildings, destroying them upon contact and burying them under concrete and glass. Well, this surprise statement came out of Frieza when he realized how quickly Pig God had appeared in front of him. It seemed all the massive weight didn't stop him from keeping his speed up. Pig God's mouth opened up wide, and he took a giant chomp in an attempt to eat Frieza up. But Frieza caught both ends of Pig God's mouth with his hands, leaving but inches between his head and Pig God's hideous mouth. There's only one way people kill pigs, said Frieza. They send them to the butcher. And thankfully, I'm still open for business. Frieza pounded Pig God with a love tap, and just that simple tap was enough to make Pig God scream in pain. For not even his several thick layers of fat could protect him from the unbelievable force in Frieza's weakest punches. Pig God's entire body jiggled like ripples in water. The pile of rubble above Watchdog Man burst forth in all directions, and beneath it was a very angry man dog. He venomously snarled and pounced at Frieza, slapping him with his right paw, but Frieza nonchalantly dodged it. The hero's paw hit the ground, creating a crater about 10 meters in length and 3 meters in depth. Well, you know what they say, said Frieza, your bark is worse than your bite. Watchdog Man's hands curled up into fists, although with his suit, the paw didn't move. Watchdog Man pounced on him again and attacked Frieza with a barrage of paw swipes and punches, but all of them were simply hitting air. This is just precious, exclaimed Frieza. The Space Emperor lightly whipped his tail, and Watchdog Man was sent hurtling down into the earth, until he was almost 12 meters underground. Drive Knight was the next to shake off the damage, and he drew his sword. Galloping with his 4 feet, he swung his sword in an attempt to cleave his head off his body, but with only 2 fingers and a tiny bit of effort, the Space Emperor pinched the sword and with a tiny squeeze, completely shattered it. I'm actually having fun. Frieza swept Drive Knight's feet from under him and blasted him away with an invisible ki. The odds were looking abysmal for the S-class heroes. Watchdog Man was crawling out of the hole, and already his suit was torn to shreds, showing parts of the skin hidden behind his suit. Pig God was clutching at his stomach, the pain from Frieza's punch still stinging badly, and Drive Knight's right arm was completely torn off his body, leaving unhooked wires and short sparks of electricity coming out of the socket. Less than a minute in, and look at us, said Pig God. No monster in Q City has ever been this tough, exclaimed Watchdog Man. What are we going to do? It looks like we're going to have to use the emergency backup plan. Watchdog Man and Pig God looked at Drive Knight to see if he was being serious, and unfortunately, he was. But Drive Knight, said Pig God, do you realize what that will entail? I'm aware, said Drive Knight. Are you sure there isn't another way? Drive Knight somberly shook his head. It was time. Do you remember the plan? Whispered Drive Knight. He asked the same question to Watchdog Man, and he gave the same response. Are you both willing to accept the sacrifice we're about to make? Said Drive Knight. The 2 heroes firmly nodded, confirming their undisputed agreement. All right, Watchdog Man, you know the drill. "Oh, what's going on? We planning a last-minute sneak attack or something?" said Frieza. "I like it. Come on, show me." Watchdog Man and Drive Knight bent down nominally and sprinted again to pummel Frieza. Frieza held out his hands to meet their attack, but just as they were inches away from his hands, they jumped up several feet above them. Instead of attacking him, the two warriors deliberately avoided him and began to jump about midair in multiple different directions. "Stop running." Frieza flew up and slammed Drive Knight to the ground. Watchdog Man changed his trajectory midair and pounced on Frieza's chest, striking him with rapid unorganized blows from his paws. Frieza grabbed Watchdog Man's wrist and threw him to the ground. The muscular lizard flew down to the ground, held his elbow out, and slammed Watchdog Man in the gut, causing the hero to bark out in pain. But then, Watchdog Man took hold of Frieza's arm and squeezed it tightly. "What are you doing? What are you?" Frieza's speech began to blur. Coming up right behind him, Drive Knight stabbed his back with a tranquilizing agent. Watchdog Man must have purposefully kept his attention diverted so Drive Knight could inject him with this substance. But Frieza didn't understand. Why were they doing this? A deep grumbling filled the air. Frieza gazed in front of him and realized Pig God hadn't moved a muscle and seemed to be deep in concentration. It took a few seconds to realize that the deep grumbling was coming from Pig God. Mustering up all the brain power he could, Frieza regained his thoughts and shouted out, "What is he doing?" Pig God let out a small chuckle. "I'm preparing to use my ultimate ability." Pig God could see Frieza wasn't following him, so the fat hero decided to speed him up. "Due to the many meals and monsters I eat, my liver and stomach need to create very strong acids to properly digest the food without any ill effects. This might not seem like much, but one time, when I was in a desperate battle with a mysterious being, I felt a massive surge in my insides, and before I knew it, I expelled an amazingly acidic liquid that not only dissolved the mysterious being, but everything behind it for more than a mile." Frieza felt a fist wrap around his heart. "No." "Oh yes," said Drive Knight, "and with the tranquilizing agent I injected in you, you won't be able to properly dodge it." "NOOO." Frieza's Kai flared to life as angrily attempted to throw the S-class heroes off of him, but his Kai was flickering on and off due to the disorientation of the tranquilizing agent. The S-class heroes didn't budge an inch and fervently held onto the lizard as tightly as they possibly could. The obese hero didn't like this. "Watchdog Man, Drive Knight, get out of there. If you get caught in the attack, your bodies will be completely vaporized." "We can't," shouted Drive Knight. "I don't know how long the tranquilizing agent will last. The serum was designed to instantly put an opponent to sleep, but Frieza's body is somehow able to resist it. We have to hold him in place. This is the last option we have." "You can't do this," yelled Pig God. "We have to," replied Watchdog Man. "I can't let anyone in Q City be put at risk. This is the only way." Pig God simply couldn't accept this. The internal battle between allowing the heroes to die in his attack and putting an end to the first god-level monster in humanity's history was raging intensely inside of him. To trade lives like this, it made him sick to his gargantuan stomach, and to make it worse, to end their lives in such a gruesome way. But, it's alright. Watchdog Man stared into the eyes of his fellow hero, and the obese hero was taken aback by the calmness in his gaze. The hero had already come to terms with his fate. "This is what we signed up for, didn't we?" Drive Knight looked at the two of them and nodded. "You fools," screamed Frieza, "let me go. Let me go. This is the end of the line for you, Frieza." "Pig God," screamed Drive Knight, "do it." The obese hero knew that there was no convincing them to change their minds. They were determined to sacrifice themselves to save humanity, and nothing Pig God did could make them think otherwise. This was it. Super acidic vaporizing belch. Pig God summoned the power from deep within his stomach and vomited a lime green acid. The force and speed at which the liquid was expelled was like a jet stream, and in no time at all three fighters were enveloped in the acid, and the entire street along with it. NOOO. The acid was like a massive flood that swept through the city. It took about half a minute for the acid to finally disperse throughout the city. Pig God was too terrified to open his eyes and look at the destruction he wrought and the lives he took from the earth. When he did, he was mortified. The range and force of the attack was even more devastating than the last time he performed the move. Spanning for about a mile, the concrete buildings were but puddles of gray ooze. Gray smoke was rising from all of the melted objects, making it appear as if the city were on fire. "Where are they?" Pig God said this with blissful ignorance. Everything was covered by the gray smoke, so the obese hero couldn't see what happened to any of them. Then, the smoke began to clear, and Pig God could see what had happened, but he instantly wished he didn't. On the ground, there was some black ooze in place of Drive Knight's body, with only his head remaining unmelted, and a few feet adjacent, there were white hairs flying up in the sky, and there were only a few bone fragments left of the hero's body. Pig God choked at the sight. They're truly gone. They had given their lives to save the human race for extinction, and it was the highest price they could have paid. Pig God dropped to his knees, and he lost all feeling in his arms. The pain was just too much. A single tear fell down the hero's face. They died true heroes. I'm going to make sure humanity remembers your sacrifice today, muttered Pig God, I promise. Oh my friend, I'm afraid their sacrifice was in vain. Pig God felt his spirit dissolve like everything else around him when he heard that voice. No, it couldn't be. Please, don't let it be. Oh, it is. The smoke cleared, revealing Frieza with his black aura enveloped around him, smiling in glee at the hero's defeated stance. That was a close call. If I hadn't powered up when I did and protected myself from the acid, your friend's sacrifices may have very well not been in vain, especially with the reacting agent inside my body. I applaud your valiant effort. Besides Saitama, that was perhaps the closest I've ever been to facing defeat. Frieza slowly flew toward Pig God, who was still on his knees. To him, it was over. He hit Frieza with everything he had, and it failed. 2 S-Class heroes gave their lives for nothing, and the rest of the S-Class has been defeated. There was no one left to save humanity. Frieza had won. The S-Class hero didn't even have the will to look at Frieza, for such a tremendous loss was too much to bear. Frieza softly cackled, and he pointed his finger at the hero's head as he prepared to finish his opponent off. Oh, it isn't all bad. On the bright side, you'll die as you lived. Frieza fired his death beam, piercing through the hero's skull and ending the hero's life in an instant. A pig. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 9. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.